My name is Christina Jimenez with the Jimenez Law Firm. And today what I want to visit with you about is how to reduce your child support during this pandemic. Now, unfortunately, this is something that we have had to deal with a lot here recently. We've had former clients, new clients come in and explain that either their pay has been drastically reduced or they are now unemployed because of COVID-19. And so we wanted to take a little bit of time today to share some general information about child support and how to get it reduced if in fact you have found yourself in this unfortunate situation. So first things first is, are you eligible to even apply for or request that the court reduce your child support? I would say that in most circumstances, if you have found yourself either unemployed or having a drastic pay decrease, more than likely you are going to meet the court standards. And so what the court is going to look at is one of two things, and it really depends on how much time has passed since the last time you went to court. Okay, so if you went to court at least 3 years ago, then the only thing that you're going to have to show is that there has been that the amount of support that you would need to pay has either been reduced by $100 or more, okay, or that your monthly support obligation should be reduced by at least 20%. Okay, if you can prove one of those two elements, then you're going to be eligible to get a modification. Now, what we're seeing most often is what we call a material and substantial change in circumstances. Okay, and so the code basically says is that if there's anything that has changed that is material or substantial or insubstantial, that you can request that your child support be reduced. And so in our opinion, and what we have seen courts do, is if a person becomes unemployed or they've had a reduction in their pay, most courts are going to say, okay, yes, this is a material and substantial change that would warrant a modification of your support. Okay, and so one of the things that I want to remind you is if you're receiving unemployment, that is going to be considered income, and your child support is going to be based on what you are receiving from unemployment. Okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, that we have a client that comes into our office and he says, since May, my pay has decreased. What I'm going to tell that client to do is to bring in every single pay record from May to present, and I'm going to look at, okay, how much money have you actually been earning for that time period? Okay, or if you've been receiving unemployment from that time, show me your unemployment benefits. Okay, if I can, I'm going to want to get maybe a supervisor or an employer or a third party of some sort to come in and say, listen, judge, this is not voluntary. This is not something that this employee would have ever chosen. Instead, this is something that has been imposed on us based on our current economic situation. Okay. And so essentially what we want to do is we want to persuade the court or to show the court that this is not willful, and that as soon as potentially you're able to earn your money the way that you had in the past, that you have no problem with a increase at that time. But for the time being, you need to have a little bit of assistance from the court. Okay, so one of the biggest questions that I get is, well, if I can't afford to pay my child support, what is going to happen? And, you know, I'm sure most of anybody who's listening to this video is very much aware of the term contempt of court, right? So contempt of court basically means that if you do not comply with what the judge is telling you to do, that you can go to jail. You can pay a fine, you can pay attorney's fees. Your jail time is up to 6 months per violation, and up to a $500 fine. And so we most certainly do not want you to be found in contempt or to even be threatened with contempt, because it's going to add an additional problem for you, which is now you have to hire a lawyer, or you potentially have to pay the other side's lawyer fees. Okay. The other thing is that you're going to end up having to pay this, big chunk of money at some point in the future if you do not modify it. So if in fact you're supposed to be paying hypothetically $1,000 a month, and you wait a full year and you do not request a modification, now you are going to have a liability of $12,000 that is also going to accrue interest. And so that is most certainly not going to be helpful to you during these times. So what would happen if you said, well, I want to go ahead and hire a lawyer and I want to try to file a motion to modify my child support? What they would typically do is file a petition to modify your child support. They would request what we call temporary orders. Now, our firm practices in numerous districts throughout the state of Texas, and a lot of courts can get us in as early as 2 weeks. Others take 4 to 6 weeks, but typically within that time frame, we will be able to get in for a temporary hearing. When we get in for a temporary hearing, we present the evidence that I just mentioned, your pay records, potentially a witness, new child support calculations, and at that time, we would ask that the court reduce your child support commencing the first day of the following month. Okay, and then at that time, typically most courts are going to say, okay, here's your child support, and it's going to continue until such time as you have a final hearing. Now, I have had a couple of courts say, listen, I'm going to reduce your child support for the next few months, and I'm going to come back in, 3 or 4 months. We're going to have a status hearing, and I'm going to follow up on your pay. If your pay has gone up, your child support is going to go up. If your pay is remaining the same or has remained the same, then your child support will remain the same. And because these are uncertain times, a lot of courts are having to get creative with how to deal with these situations. So let's say hypothetically that we do the temporary hearing, we get to your final hearing, and that's anywhere from 6 months to a year down the road. Same standard applies. If your pay has increased, then your child support will go back up. But the trick will be that during this pandemic, during these difficult times, you are not accruing arrearages, you are not being faced with potential contempt actions, and hopefully you're able to take care of your family, which should always be your primary focus. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of insight on whether or not you're eligible for a child support modification, whether or not it's something that you potentially need to pursue. If it is, I'd encourage you to reach out to a really good family law attorney, and hopefully they'll be able to give you the insight that you need and get you on your way.